Hello, Mimi. Thank you for hosting another webinar. Hi, Cal. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Surya. Good morning, Chanmin, Mimi.
Good morning, everyone.
So, how's the weather in London, Cal?
It's been decent these last couple of days, so I'm happy.
You're happy? Okay. I've been told by my sources that it rained yesterday, so no, that's good. No, hope you guys are all having fun. Let's see who's in the audience. Can anyone else hear us in the background? Just type in a hello if you can hear us, and we can go from there. Let's get started. So what I'll do today is I'll share my screen. We'll all be turning off our cameras when we share our screens, so you have a better visibility of the product. And we'll be going over the full guide of the of the of the module. So we'll be covering the payroll module today. So right. I think there is a delay, Mimi. So, hello everybody. I think now we can see everybody in the chat. If you can hear us, okay, just drop us a hi in the chat. I think we had a slight duplication there for a second. Brilliant. I think everybody can hear us. I was just saying earlier that we will be going over the payroll module in detail today. And we'll be covering the end-to-end onboarding guide for payroll module. And once we start sharing our screens, we'll all turn our cameras off so you can focus on a slightly bigger screen. And towards the end of the session, we'll open it up for Q&A, and you can ask any of your questions. And what we'll also have is a member of our support team join in and answer any of the technical queries towards the end. But without further delay, we'll make a quick start to the webinar by opening a poll. So I just wanted to understand where we are and sort of like what employee numbers you usually deal with. And based on that, we are able to tailor the session a bit further. So there's just a quick poll that's running in the background while I get my screen sharing on. And if you could just answer your average volume of employees that you see per company, that would be helpful as we go forwards. So I'm going to share my screen now, and from there we are able to go through and look at the rest of the module. So bear with me 1 second here. Right. I hope everybody can see my screen there. If you are able to see my screen, just type yes in the chat and we'll begin. So to get started with, I need to reload this page there. 1 second. Let me reload the page. Bear with me 1 moment. Right, I'm just logging back, guys. Just a moment and we'll get on our way with the session. Right, so in the meantime, we do have some answers in the chat. There is 1 billion someone is wishing. That's not sure how you deal with it, but it's quite cool. And I think the average number tends to be between around 10 to 50, I'd say, most people. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be looking at the payroll automation side of things, and with that, we'll also be covering the full suite. So hope everybody can see the payroll dashboard here. There is a tool here for bulk payroll, and we'll be coming back to bulk payroll in a minute, but just wanted to give you guys an overview on what bulk payroll does in KPM. So once you have triggered the automation, and we will be in this webinar, we'll show you exactly how to do that. What you are able to do is to set a payroll run date, a submission date, a pay date, and the reminder date. Now, what the system will then do is if there is an approved payroll already, then it is going to process the payroll, do the FPS submission on your behalf. So it would be quicker, and you just have to monitor and overview the process essentially. So what we would be doing here is going towards the automation by the end of this video. But if you see, there's a recurring, which is an option where you could repeat the automation. You could even send out your payslips to the clients or the employer of the clients. So, sorry, the employees or the employers, depending on how you set it up. There's also a synchronization which can synchronize the journal entries for the payroll with the bookkeeping module. Now, to get to that stage, you'd have to set up your employer first and run 1 month of payroll, and we'll be going over that shortly. So under general settings, to set up the module, you have the default settings, and this essentially gives you the views that you can edit. And so you've got the row of, you can select your default rows. That shows the total number of employees, and this is something that ties back to the question that we had earlier on how many employees do you have. So depending on how you want it set up, you can see all the employees on the same page rather than switching between pages. There's also the default tab, and that is the tab here. And you can customize it to only show you the employers who are registered for PAYE rather than all the clients. That can be changed there. And then you have the default month, which shows you either the current period or the previous period. And again, you can make those changes. So it saves you some minutes as you navigate through on this on a week-to-week or a month-to-month basis. There's also the default pay frequency. Now, depending on the sort of clients your practice takes up, you can set this up as a monthly default frequency, where it assumes that that is the monthly frequency for all the clients. And you can then go and make the specific adjustments on each client. And you can also do weekly, 2-weekly, or 4-weekly if you run weekly payrolls, or if you are essentially setting this up for payroll bureaus. Then we also have the email templates. Now, you can essentially customize the emails that go out from here. And with this, it is going to send out that email each time it's sending out a payslip or an email to the client. So there is the client email. That's the payslip email. Again, this can be customized. You have the reports emails, the reminders, pensions, additional forms, and the P11Ds towards the end. So all of those emails can be customized. And on the right-hand side, you have tags where you can drag and drop the tags onto this email, where it would automatically fetch the client information from here and then populate it down here. Now that we've covered this, let's go into a particular client setup, and then we will look at a client that I've already set up, but we'll also be looking at how to add an employee. How would you do the bulk employee and the opening opening balances for your payroll if you're switching halfway through the year. So I'm just going to open a company here. So this is a company that's already set up. Now you'll see that there's a lot of information on this dashboard, and this is what you can expect to see as you've made submissions throughout the year in your app. Now, what you see here is all of these are KPM submissions. Now that's because this is a demo account, but as you make FPS submissions live to HMRC, you'll see a light blue HMRC submitted button there. And that essentially gives you an overview of how many returns have been submitted to HMRC and you can also track the stuff which is due, overdue, or failed. So it's essentially a mini tracker built into the payroll dashboard. You also have the employer details here. Now, if you're starting off for the very first time, it always the best practice is to check these settings, and you would often notice that when you are creating your first client, it always opens in settings, general settings, and you'll be taken to this page by default. Now here you have to click edit, and you just need to select all the frequencies and all the other bits about this company. So for example, that's the name of the company, that's the HMRC reference number, and the element that you would need to update here is your default pay frequency, as this would be always defaulted to. So let's say if there is a company that does weekly payroll, however, they have 1 or 2 monthly employees as well, then you would need to set the maximum amount of people on a particular frequency is the company's default pay frequency in KPM. So you could then select that from this drop-down list here. You would then put in the employer's bank account code here, the sort code and account number. And once all of that is done, you would have to tick this synchronize data with bookkeeping button. Now, once this button is ticked, what happens is the system will start auto-generating journal entries, and it would start publishing those entries in our bookkeeping system. Now, if you don't have our bookkeeping system and you use a third-party bookkeeping software, you can export payroll journals out from KPM and into a number of other providers. So let me just quickly give you a glance into that. So for example, if these are all the journal entries, I can select those entries and I can click export journals, and then I am able to export them out to any of these software vendors. Now, from that, let's just go back to settings again. So once that synchronized button is ticked, the system will automatically start generating those journal entries for you. A thing to keep in mind here is if this isn't turned on for, let's say, the beginning of the year, and you turn it on halfway through the year, the system cannot generate the journals of the previous 6 months, for example. So it would only start doing it from the next month that you do the pay run from. So it always is a good idea to turn this on right when you start doing the payroll for a client, as it would automate the process for you a fair bit. The next thing is if the employer is claiming for any small employees relief or apprenticeships or anything else, you're able to tick those boxes. And you can also enable departmental accounts. Now, what that would do is it can track and put people's salaries into separate departments, so it becomes easier for you to track the departmental spend. Now, going from that, let's move on to the contact details. Now, this is going. Oh, one more thing here. Whenever you have finished editing this page, there is a save button on the bottom right hand side, and you would notice that there is a save button on almost all the major changes that you're making. So keep in mind that once you've made all the changes, you will click save, and as you click save, all of the changes that you've made on that particular account will be saved. So that would essentially continue across the system. So you'd see that the same fundamental is present in contact details, where you'll click edit, and then you can produce or give the details of the person within the company who is responsible for the payroll. Then you've got HMRC credentials. Now, if you are an agent, these credentials are filled in automatically from the My Admin module. So for those who were not here, with the My Admin module, let me just duplicate this page 1 second. So with My Admin, you are able to essentially put in all the information in the agent credentials page here, and from that, it will automatically be picked up here when you're making a submission. Then going into payslips, you have a number of different payslip formats to choose from, and you can choose any of these that you like or prefer. You're also able to change these formats later on. So even if you've chosen one for the time being, you will be able to make those changes again in the future. Now, pay rates. Now, this is where you would be able to select the rates and add any specific rates for your company. Now, the three that we provide you are with basic, overtime, ad hoc. I'd always recommend you to leave the basic rate as your national minimum wage rate, because as and when the minimum wage changes, the basic rate would see an update. So if you pay people over the national minimum wage or there is an employer specific rate per type of contract, you are able to create all of those down below. Like you've seen a premium rate of £15 an hour, and I've got a contractor rate at £30 an hour, and I can create any number of rates that I want to create here. Now, what that would do is, as the minimum wage goes up, this will get updated automatically, and you will have all of the other elements stay static. So let's say if your employer is paying £30 an hour, however, and they will not really see any changes to the base rate affect them. So this is only there to help you with the automation and updates as they come along. The other bit then is data security. Now, you are able to set a master password for the full organization, as well as set an individual password per each employee. So what I mean by that is there is a master password here that you can use, but if you just go into manage payroll, employees, and if I were to just edit an employee here, you'll see that they have their own document passwords for each individual employee. Now, going back to settings, one of the other bits finally is change of tax year. Now, this process is done when you're moving from the current tax year to the next tax year. If you've purchased KPM in this tax year, however, you've done all of your taxes in a third-party system or wherever else, you would still need to just close the tax year and move it to 2025 once everything's been closed off in your previous software. Now, what that would do is it would close the year in KPM and do a final FPS submission. But remember that if you have a third-party system, you'd have done the FPS submission on that, and the system essentially is just asking you if you would like to close the year and move on to the 2025 financial year, and that's this specific page. You don't have to worry about it all too much, because towards the end of the year, we do provide guides, we send you emails and loads of other things to make sure that you do this properly, and it's just a couple steps where you just have to tick off that you've done all these three actions, and then you can change your tax year. So it's relatively straightforward as well. Now, from that, you have your employee YTD. Now, if you're changing your payroll software halfway through the year, you'd have to import your employees, and then once you've imported your employees, you would then go into the employee YTD. You would then set up their year-to-date figures. Now, in my case, this is a running company, so I won't be able to show how this is done, but I could show you something in a similar company which would be easier to understand. So let me just switch up the providers to somebody where we have a new provider. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, let's go to Charlie Limited there. Right, so as we said, it would go to the general settings first, and once this has been updated, you would be bringing in your employees through the managed portal. Let me just go back to that 1 second. Let's see if the demo account has it. Right. Yeah. So we have the employees page there. So add any employees, you'd have to fill in all this information. And that's the same information that you would even do if you were to import an employee. So let's click on the import. Here you get a template, and from the template, you are able to import any number of employees in at the same time using this bulk template. So I will show you the bulk template there. So this is how your once you have a bulk template and once you go to edit them, you'll see all your employees in one page, and you just have to approve their status in order for them to be accepted in as new employees. Now, once they've been imported, you'll see on the top right hand side here, the import percentage will go from 0% to 100%. And once that's done, you'll start seeing your employees on this dashboard here. Now, once you see them on this dashboard, that doesn't mean that they've been completely set up yet. It just is a part of the setup process. One of the other things you have to look into next is the employee YTD, as well as the auto enrollment for these people. So the next thing you do is, depending on your preference, you can set up the auto enrollment next. And here you'd update the staging date and the re-enrollment date for your auto enrollment. And you'd have to add in all the pension schemes that this specific employer uses. Now, in my case, I'm just using one demo scheme. However, you can add as many schemes as you need. So I can say demo to scheme, and I can add a different pension provider there. So let's just see. And let's go next. And I'll just say finish this. So what you'd see is, as the providers and the pension schemes get updated, you'll see those pension schemes here in the list. And from the list, you would see all the information about the pension providers. And it would show the same exact list when you go into Manage Payroll's employees and when you're going on to edit those employees. So when you go to edit an employee, the last page there is always going to be about the pension provider. So you just have to select the pension provider they're associated with, and it would automatically fill in this information. And you can also select the percentage-based or the fixed pension contributions as well. So if somebody wants to pay, let's say, £800 into the pension, you could just tick the fixed option and then give the exact numbers that they want to be paying into the pension scheme. Now, from that, let's look into the employee YTD as well. So here, when you click on employee YTD, you have, again, two options: either to go add those in manually, and otherwise you have the import, where you would be able to download the template, update the data, and upload the template. Now, in my case, because this company is already formed and we've run the payrolls on this, I'm not able to import the YTD here. But if you are stuck through the employee YTD import process, feel free to reach out to our support team, who will review the file with you and will help you to import it for the very first time. So if you're stuck anywhere, just feel free to reach out to the support team by just raising a ticket, which you see on the top right-hand side here. Now, once your employee is set and you've done the auto-enrollment and set up the pension scheme for each and every employee that you have on board, what you'll see is you would have them set up. Now, based on the criteria that you've set up that employee, you will either have them on an hourly or on a fixed pay rate but variable hours, or you would have them on a gross pay, and anything else or anything on top of that would be processed through the additionals tab. So think of it this way. Let's say if Ash, or John in this case, has an £8,000 salary that comes through. That's the gross pay for John here. And what would happen is any bonus or anything on top of this pay has to be processed with the additional section. So you're just setting out the rates and the rates as in the hourly rate or the annual wage in this particular setup process. And the next thing you do is to go into the additional section, and here you are able to add any additions or deductions for that particular person. So let's say if there is an addition of to Pargov, let's say he gets a bonus of £500, you would be able to select that bonus and also select the tax treatment of that bonus. Once that's done, you can save that. And something similar, you would also be able to do the same thing for John, where you would be able to do a deduction, where you have things like a salary sacrifice and a number of other bits. So these are all the deductions that you can do as well from the system. Now, once that has been done, so you've got your gross pay, any bonuses, additions, and deductions added in through the additional section. If the employee takes any leave, and that is any of the SSP, the adoption pay, maternity, paternity, or adoption, you'll be able to process all of that through the leave section here, as well as having attachment of earnings, mileage claims, and expense claims that you can all process through the section here. The next bit is leave and holidays. Now, this is essentially a leave tracker that you can put in place. And based on the tracker, you would be able to see how many leaves a person is entitled to versus how many leaves have they utilized. And this essentially helps you keep track of how many leaves have been used up. So you can have a conversation with the employer once all the leaves have been consumed. There is also the timekeeping section. Now, with the timekeeping section, you'd see that there is the you are able to add time records. You can again do this one employee at a time, or you're able to bulk upload your timesheets by clicking on import time record here. And by doing this, you're essentially going to import the timesheets for everybody in your in this employer's company at once, which should make things a bit easier if you're dealing with a large volume of clients. We then have process payroll. Now here you would have to, this is a 3-step process, and what this would do is it would essentially create an FPS for you to submit. So based on this, first thing you do is you approve your gross pay. Let me check how many months have we done. So we've done the full year here. Let me find a company where we haven't done a full year. Just bear with me 1 second. And let's go back to London this year. Let's see if we've done any more than that here. So there's payroll, payslips. Right. So I can show the month of February here. So let's say for the month of February, the 2 which are automatically approved are always going to be the ones which are based on timekeeping. So this has been approved previously by somebody manually. However, you would see that if you have an employee that gets paid on the basis of time worked, you would be able to see that they're already in a pre-approved state because you had to manually go in and enter their total hours. So if you want to change the gross wage here, you're either having to change the hours that they worked, or you have something to look into the employee's rate and then look into their rates, and that would fix your gross pay for an employee that's paid on an hourly basis. For everybody else, they do need approval. So let's say if I wanted to add in somebody's salary here, so I could just say basic pay, could choose the rate for that person, and then we can add the salary here. However, if you've set up your employees properly, you do not have to do this. It would automatically pick on all the information. Now, as it's a demo account, we haven't set these up, so we can fill these in manually and showcase some other bits here as well. So let's say besides gross pay, which in this case, I'll say it's 3,000, if there is another pay, let's say SSP or any of the other criteria, you can select that and then add an associated amounts with it as well. And based off of that, again, once you've clicked save, all of that information will go into the particular line of that person. And as you see, this is timekeeping that it has pulled in from the employee profile, and these two have been manually edited. So the system will keep track of any manual inputs that you've been making in the process of processing payroll. So now I'll just simply select everything and then click approve, and it would automatically approve all these payrolls, or the payroll for all these employees. And after this, you can do a pension assessment, and post pension assessment, we'll do a submission. So let's have a look at the submit FPS for the month of January there. Just bear with me 1 second. KPM finish. Right, so if I then go back to the month of February, you'll notice that that's the pension assessment for February. I simply have to click run assessment, and here, based on the wage that they've made, it will automatically calculate the rates again here. And if somebody is exempt or has opted out of pensions, you will then see them as exempt on this list here. Now, once this is done, you simply do the pension assessment, and the next step to that is processing the payroll. So you'd firstly process the payroll there. 1 moment, I'll just finish this off. Okay, payroll, and we'll run the payroll, and then you would select the month from the list. I have selected February, and after February, you would be able to select all the bits that you would like to process. And if you are late for whatever the reason, you can select that reason here. You would also need to make sure that the synchronized data with bookkeeping is always toggled to yes. And what that would do is it will automatically post a journal entry for you. Now, once this is done, you simply click next, finish. That gives you the full month of February in a view like this. And after that, you simply have to click on submit FPS, where you'd be able to make an FPS submission for the month of February. I'll leave that in for now, but it's just one step. It does your validation for you. In the next screen, you pop in your HMRC credentials, or they're auto-populated from your agent services account. And once that's done, you can make a direct submission to HMRC, or do a preliminary submission to KPM and then submit to HMRC, both of which are possible. Now, from that, there is several elements that we've automated in this flow as well. So you'll notice that there is a HMRC Connect function here. Now, the way HMRC Connect is designed, it would need you to authenticate either all the accounts individually. So let's say if you've got a portfolio of 100 clients, you would have to go in and approve all 100 of them to have the agent services enabled. And what we've done that with that strategy is instead we've used the same API functionality for bulk clients. So let's say if you've imported 200 clients at once, you would only authorize once to validate all 200 clients in one go. However, if you add new clients, HMRC reverts back to the previous system. So what you are able to do here is, if your HMRC Connect is dropping out, you could make sure that that connection is up to date as you add new clients. And to do that, you simply have to go back to the payroll module, and under general, and under the, sorry, just give me 1 second. Sorry, so you just have to go into the manage payroll section, click on HMRC Connect, and it is going to fetch the tax codes based on the authorization that you have provided. Give me 1 second. I'll go into the authorization screen towards the end of the session as well. Now that we've covered the manage payroll section here, you would notice that we went through the auto enrollment as well. Now, for auto enrollment, there are 2 pension schemes that we support, where Nest and Smart Pensions, we are able to do a direct submission with them, and those submissions can be tracked in the pension services log. So if you are using an Nest or Smart Pension, you can use this service end to end and make a submission directly without logging onto their website. Any of the other pension schemes that you've seen in that list of pension providers, you just need to be going in and manually downloading and sending the data across. Let me just log in again. Just bear with me 1 second. There we are. Right. So from there, let's just go back into the client. The next bit then is our submissions log. Now, as you make monthly FPS submissions, you'll see all of those made in and visible under the submission FPS here. And if you are required to do an EPS for claiming any small employer allowances or anything else, you're able to make those EPS submissions from within the system as well. If you only intend to use KPM for P11Ds, you'd have to essentially follow the process of setting up your employees still. However, you do not have to do any of their YTD information, and you can just do their P11D submissions from the system as well. And we've covered the payroll journals before, where you can multi-select payroll journals that have been processed by the system and then export them out to any of the softwares here. After that, we have the reporting section, and under the reporting section, you have the PAYE calculator, which shows you the, let me just go into monthly and select an employee. There we are. And it shows you all their PAYE calculations for that period. So somewhat similar to this. You also have the payroll summary, and you can select any time between 2 months, and it shows you the every single employee that you've had in that time, and the gross pay and the totals here for you to share with your clients at any point. You have periodic tax and national insurance information, YTD details, and additional reports, where you are able to have a report on the additionals that you're processing through in the system. So whether that be bonuses or salary sacrifices, attachment of earnings or mileage claims or expense claims, then you can run reports on all of them. And then finally, there are additional forms, which is your P45 and P60. Now, if somebody leaves the company, it's a relatively straightforward thing of just going back into the employee section, clicking edit to the employee, and where you have the starter details and the payroll details, you would also see the leaving date on it. Once you've populated the leaving date, once the system runs the payroll, it is automatically going to generate a P45 for you, and that P45 would be visible under this payment. Sorry. That P45 is going to show up in the additional reports under the P45 section. Sorry, in the additional forms under the P45 section here. The same thing for P60. You would notice that towards the end of the financial year, it would automatically generate your P60s for you, and you will be able to see all the employees' P60s in one page, and you're also able to email them out in bulk. So there's always the email option of sending things out. There's also the departmental reports, which you can, if you enable departments and setting up your payroll, you're able to run reports based on which department had what sort of expenses. So you're able to track the full payroll side of expenses per department. And then you have the tax code report, which would essentially show you all the tax code changes made through the year, which would again be relevant in sharing that with the client. You have logs, and the logs would capture every single item that you've done in this specific client. And then you have email logs, which will track every single email that has been sent out or been received from within the app. So if I were to go back and toggle this from 2022, for example, I'm able to check the email logs. Let me just go 2024 there for a second. There we are. Okay, 1 second. And it does something similar to this. Now, from that, we have, let's roll back and look at how would you automate the process. Now, to automate your payroll process, you would have to go into Manage, set up your employees, set up the YTD information if that is relevant. Once the employees are set, you would need to run their first month or the first week's payroll. Once that is done, you would simply need to go into the process payroll section and you would approve the pay for the subsequent month or the months. So you can go in and approve all 12 months if needed, or you will only approve the next month if you see a lot of change in the client's account. So you could just go in and approve the next month. And once all of your months are in an approved state, the system would automatically run the payroll for you and do an FPS submission for you as well. So once all the 12 months are approved, you just go back into the payroll, go into general settings, bulk payroll, automation settings, and under the automation settings, you would then be able to select how the automation is working. So in this case, if I click edit, I can then go and say, this is a recurring task. I want to notify the client's manager, not the client themselves, so that would then email the person who's responsible for the payroll. You can also notify the accountant for any of the things that's related to the automation, and you can automate your employee's payslip, the synchronizing data with HMRC, and it is also going to look in and change the base rate if there is ever a requirement to change it. Now, that's how you would trigger the automation on as well. And if you're having any issues triggering this automation, you can reach out to our support team and we'll be able to look over your automation settings and the rules and walk you over it. Now, with that, the presentation part of the webinar is over. So what we'll do next is the Q&A session. So do we have any questions regarding this module?